All right, thank you very much. Welcome to our meeting today, April the 28th. And we welcome all of our members from all around the world, throughout the USA and Canada. These meetings are every single Wednesday at the exact same time. They're for members only. And they continue on. We have about 42 meetings a year. Please visit if you haven't visited, or even if you have visited, continue to visit because things change. Uh, our new website, and you will be very happy with it, surprised, thrilled, and all the information that you will ever need about the group is also on the website. The meetings are all listed. All the activities are listed. Information about the message board, and just a whole bunch of information. So try to take advantage of our website. Also communicate with, it's a great recruiting tool for us to use to recruit people to become members. Have them give them our email or our website address and link and make and encourage people to take a look at it if they're interested in joining, or if you're trying to get them interested. So try to share the information. For example, this is on the meetings page. This is kept up to date by Mike on like a monthly or maybe every few weeks list of our meetings, and right now they're all the way through December of this year. So all that information is on the website. I just want to talk about a few meetings coming up on May the 12th. We have Carrie Rigo. She has actually spoke to our group probably 3 other times, but many, many years ago. She's a very, very wonderful human being, very much an expert on social media, and she's going to talk about social media platforms perfect for seniors. And so try to attend that meeting, and you'll really, really, really enjoy her. Also on May the 5th, which is next week, Sheeta's back with us with a Q&A session. Have you gotten many questions so far, Cheetah?
Oh yeah, I got plenty.
Oh. So should we tell them to keep sending them or stop?
Sure. Why not?
Okay, and then today's meeting, we have Carrie Kerskie, the identity theft expert in the area and in all of Southwest Florida and probably the world. And Carrie, we welcome you to our Naples Mac user group, and we're thrilled to have you back. This is probably the 5th or 6th visit that we've had from Carrie, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, George, and I appreciate coming back. Y'all are one of my favorite groups, so I love coming back to talk to you. So today we're going to talk about protecting your assets from pandemic scams and threats. I'm going to go through this kind of fast because I want to make sure there's plenty of time at the end for questions. I want to, get to any concerns that you might have. And again, with the questions, make sure that you put them in the chat like you usually do for your meetings. And just ask general questions. If you have something relating to a particular incident that happened to you, then I'd be happy to talk to you after the event today. So frauds and scams are up, identity theft is up, cyber crimes are up. Why? Well, there are a lot of different things that happened in 2020. So because of COVID and the pandemic, people were forced to work from home, and a lot of businesses were not prepared for that. And because a lot of businesses were being told to shut down, especially those in entertainment, hospitality, bars, restaurants, whatnot, they had to either limit capacity or close altogether. That meant more people filing for unemployment. And because the government was trying to get money into the hands of those people as soon as possible, there were some mistakes made along the way, and we'll talk about those. And then they came out with the PPP and the EIDL, which was financial support to help small businesses during this time. All of this led to fear and confusion all around. So fear and confusion about losing the job, about COVID itself, about what the future was going to hold. This all creates a perfect opportunity for the bad guys. But with the bad guys, the other thing we noticed is that they too had to pivot just like any other organization. So what did they do? They looked at, well, what do we already have that we could use? And that's the surplus of information. You've heard me say every time I come back, first, I think with the first conversation was how much a name, address, date of birth, and social, you could buy it online for about $10. Then it was down to $5. Now it's about 75 cents is the last I'd heard about, because there's so much information. So the bad guys said, okay, what can we do with this information? And again, the bad guys had to pivot and change, just like the legitimate organizations. All this created this perfect storm. So you have the fear and confusion, and you have the bad guys trying to figure out how they're going to stay in business. Because remember, bad guys need to have legitimate businesses to help with money laundering. And a lot of the businesses that they were using to launder money, those were the ones that were primarily shut down or cut in capacity. So again, bad guys had to pivot. So let's talk about some of the current threats, which are the result of this perfect storm that we've had. First, vaccine scams. Priority reservation, because when it first came out, especially the first of this year in 2021, not everybody had access to it. So there was, again, fear and confusion because people wanted it, they couldn't get it, there were long lines. And then it was, well, who's allowed to administer it? Who's not? Where do you get it? How do you sign up? So the bad guys saw the opportunity and they swooped in and they started calling people saying, hey, for a fee, I can move you to the top of the list. We can make sure you get a vaccine. And now we're hearing talks about there may or may not be some sort of a vaccine passport. You might be required for travel or for visiting businesses. There's all kinds of talk out there. And anytime there's different conflicting news reports or conflicting information, again, the bad guys swoop right in and they take advantage of that. And then some of the things we were seeing, especially in the beginning with people trying to get the COVID testing and the COVID rapid testing, is insurance verification. So you would probably get a test and it might have just been coincidence. You get a phone call, you get an email saying, hey, we understand you recently had a test, but we have some information. We need to verify your insurance. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay out of pocket, or maybe you paid out of pocket and you'll be able to get a reimbursement. Again, fear and confusion. A lot of the bad guys just swoop right in. Then the stimulus money with all the scams. So like I said, it was the unemployment, and then there's the PPP and the EIDL. And then with the stimulus money, which was the checks that were being sent out to help people by giving them a little bit of extra cash to help them pay bills, buy food, whatnot. Well, some of the scams we were seeing is people were being notified supposedly from the IRS saying that there was trouble with the direct deposit. And because they would start off by saying, hey, if you didn't get your stimulus check, that's because we had problem with your direct deposit. Click this link here and we'll take care of it, or call this number. And then of course they would get your bank account information, or they'd say, we need to verify it, your account number, your personal information. Or they would say, hey, we're just checking to make sure that you received yours. And if you said yes, then they might not do anything with it. If you said no, then it's okay, well, we can help you do that. Well, they weren't helping you do that. They were helping them get the money on behalf of you. So that was another version. Some would even call around saying, hey, there's a new program out and we can get you qualified to get even more money. Again, it's a scam. Then they were claiming fake dependents. So this was something that was interesting. Tax identity theft has been around since about 2012, 2013. And we've seen modifications of how bad guys are using dependents for these tax returns. First, it was they were using college-age students, so that way they could get I think it was about $1,600 refund on average for college students based on all the deductions that they could take. So when a parent went to file their own tax return claiming their dependent, it was rejected because it said your dependent's already been claimed on someone else's. Well, with the stimulus money and the way it was rolled out, and the way last year the tax deadline was pushed from April until October, and it gave more people time to file, well, it gave the bad guys more time to file before those people who hadn't filed yet. And the way you got your stimulus check, or how the value of the stimulus check, was based on reported income, but also on number of dependents under the age of 17. And if you hadn't filed yet, then they would file it because that would be based on either the prior year's return or that current year's return. So come, November, or after the October 15th deadline, when people were trying to legitimately file their tax returns, again, they started getting the notification that their dependent's identity had been used on someone else's tax return, and they were doing that to get extra stimulus money. Then unemployment fraud. This has been a huge problem. I worked with at least 100 people just in Florida alone. I've worked with a gentleman who lives in New York, and he got a letter from the state of Kentucky regarding his unemployment benefits. He's never lived in Kentucky, obviously doesn't work in Kentucky. It was a fraudulent filing. So this is a nationwide issue that we're having. And a big part of it is because, again, they were trying to fast track and get the money into the hands of the people who actually needed it. Anytime you fast track, you're cutting verifications, you're cutting validations. And by doing that, it leaves it wide open for the bad guys. So the normal process is put in place so there are checks and balances so they can make sure the money's going to the right person and to someone who actually needs it. But because they fast tracked it, a lot of those checks and balances went out the window, and that has led to the problem we have today. Same thing with the PPP and the EIDL. PPP is the Payment Protection Program or Plan, and then the EIDL was Economic Impact Disaster Loans. So the PPP was for small businesses to help them continue to meet payroll, even though they might not have had all the revenue in during that time because of the forced cutbacks from COVID. So any small business, if they needed these funds, they could apply for it. And typically they didn't have to pay these funds back. Now, there are a lot of little ins and outs and little, trying to figure out if you owe the money back or not. That's a whole nother issue I'm not going to get into. But regardless, the PPP was created to help keep businesses afloat and to allow them to keep paying their employees during this time. Again, they fast-tracked the program so that the small businesses and their employees could get access to these funds right away. It left it wide open for the bad guys. Some of the things they did is when they first came out with it, you could only apply for this program from the bank where you had your account, your business, your corporate accounts. But then they said, well, no, we need to open it up because sometimes people don't have access to that, or maybe those banks already got their maximum number of funding. There were all different types of excuses. So they said, well, pretty much any bank can do it now. So a lot of the virtual or online banks got involved. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the bad guys. They would apply online through these virtual banks to get these funds. They would make up a company name. So for example, if they used my identity, they would just call it Carrie Kerskie LLC or Carrie Kerskie Farm. They were doing a lot of agriculture type of stuff. So that's what we were seeing with the PPP. Same thing with the EIDL. Now the EIDL is a loan that had to be paid back. Most of them we're seeing are $48,900 or less. For some reason, that $49,000 must create some kind of an extra scrutiny. So that's why most of them were under that $49,000. And how people were finding out about it is that they would get a letter from the SBA saying, okay, so you got your loan, and starting in September of August or of 2021, here's how much your first payment's going to be. So if you got one of these letters and you threw it away, there's some extra work that need to be done, because that typically was the first red flag. Then we noticed, like I mentioned, money laundering. The businesses that the bad guys would normally use for money laundering, well, they couldn't do as much anymore. So what did they do? They looked at their inventory. They have all this user information. So they started creating bank accounts, brokerage accounts, investment accounts, virtual like cryptocurrency accounts, in the names of victims whose information they used to set up these bank accounts. And then they would start moving money in, money out. So basically they're using your identity or victims' identities to help them with money laundering. Then, of course, account takeover, that's when they're trying to, or they succeed in taking over one of your current accounts. Typically, it's your bank account, brokerage account, investment type of accounts, using your current credit cards, taking over your mobile phone account so that they could get the security codes that are texted to you, all different types of account takeover. So we saw an increase of those as well. New account fraud, you've heard me talk about before. That's when someone uses your identity to apply for a new credit account, such as a credit card, a mortgage, car loan, a utility type of account, such as a mobile phone account. So we started seeing a lot of these. So what are some of the warning signs of all this type of these threats out there that I just told you about? Well, you might get a letter from the SBA, Small Business Administration, regarding your PPP or EIDL. So if you get one of those letters, don't throw it away, hang on to it. Make sure you contact the SBA. You can reach out to my office. We've been working with tons of people since the first of this year who are now getting these letters. You could get a letter from a bank. It could be your bank or a bank you've never done business with. And they say that they're going to suspend your account due to suspicious activity. That's a red flag for potential money laundering using your information. Another one is you might get a letter from a bank regarding a new account. It might say, hey, welcome to, and I'm just going to use for example purposes, hey, welcome to Wells Fargo. We're glad that you opened your account with us. Well, if you don't have an account with them and you get that letter, don't think it's a scam. Don't think it's, a typo or an error. You need to look into it. Next thing you might get is a letter from a creditor regarding your new credit card or new credit account or new loan, or you might even actually get a credit card in the mail that you didn't ask for. Another red flag would be getting a notification from the United States Postal Service, could get it online or by mail, regarding a change of an address request. If you didn't put in this change of address request, that means somebody else has done it using your information. Some other things that you might receive by mail are 1099-Gs. Now, these are usually January through about March when you might have gotten one of these. The 1099-G is what you get if you have unemployment benefits, meaning if you get paid for unemployment. So some of the people, they didn't get a letter from a state regarding their unemployment benefits. They got a 1099-G showing how much they had been paid. Well, they weren't paid. Someone used their identity to get these benefits, and it created a whole huge problem. So if you've got one of these forms, make sure you're talking to your accountant or CPA about it, and also keep your eyes and ears open for them next year, starting January, February, March timeframe, to make sure you're not getting one, because we're still seeing bad guys filing fraudulent unemployment claims into the 2021 year. You might get other unknown tax forms. You might get unexpected credit cards. You could get a companion card. That's a form of like an account takeover. So they're not setting up a new credit card. They're just calling your credit card company, pretending to be you, saying, yeah, I'd like to add a companion or an authorized user on my card. And they order a card in their name on your account. So when they don't pay the bill, you're left holding the bag. So keep your eye open for that. Then there's types of phone calls that you might get for unknown credit applications. If you get a call from, let's say, Citicorp saying, hey, welcome. We understand you applied for an application. We do have some more questions, or we've been trying to contact you. That could be a potential red flag. It could also be a scam. So we'll talk about how to deal with the scam phone calls in a minute. Or if you are notified about fraudulent activity on your credit card or maybe your debit card or in your bank account, your bank might call you if they see something that's unusual for you, especially if it's involving wire transfers or any large amounts. That could be something. And another thing is, never give out your personal information to an unexpected phone call. So if someone does call you and they do say that they're your bank or your credit card company or someone you typically do business with, and they say, well, we need to verify you're the account holder, and they start asking you questions. If you weren't expecting that phone call, just say to them, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. Let me get your number. I'm going to have to call you back. If they're legitimate business, they're going to let you call them back when it's convenient for you. If they're the bad guys, typically they're going to start to become verbally abusive and aggressive because they're going to tell you, nope, we have to take care of this right now, or you're going to be on the hook for all this fraud. So that's a little red flag to look out for when you're dealing with some of these phone calls. So let's talk about some prevention tips. Now I told you about all the horrible stuff, things you need to look out for. So what are some things you can do to protect yourself? Well, first with phone calls, let it go to voicemail. You know, we have this instinct that when the phone rings, we answer it. I mean, I know even as a kid, when the house phone would ring, my brother and I were like knocking each other out of the way to try to race to get to the phone of who was going to answer it first. Nowadays, not so much. My house phone could ring off the hook and neither one of my children will lift a finger to even attempt to answer it. So they weren't ingrained with that. When the phone rings, you have to answer a response like we all were. But nowadays, you don't have to. If it's that important of a phone call, that person's going to leave you a message. They're going to leave you a voicemail and you can call them back at your convenience. So one way to really avoid a lot of the phone scams, just don't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Another thing is don't believe your caller ID. You've heard me say this before because they can spoof it. Caller ID spoofing is very simple, very easy to do, doesn't take much time at all. There are tons of apps available online for bad guys to use. Some of them are free, some of them require a small fee. So these are tools that the bad guys can use. So never believe your caller ID. A lot of times people will say, I only answer calls from my local area code. The bad guys know that. That's why they're going to program local numbers to be displayed in your caller ID in an attempt to get you to answer. Now, another thing to be careful that we're seeing more and more of is that on occasion, the bad guys might pick a phone number that's for a contact you have stored in your phone. So when you see the call come through, it's not going to have that phone number on there. It might say, hey, it's Bob, it's going to have Bob's name on it. Well, it's not really Bob. It's a bad guy. They just so happen to pick a number that was for Bob, who's already in your contacts. So if you answer the phone, hey, Bob, how you doing? What's going on? Well, now the bad guy knows that you know this person and they might change their technique and they might pretend to be Bob. So just be careful when you're talking to someone, even if it's from a contact that you do know or a contact that's in your phone. If they don't sound right for them, whether the voice is off, whether their speech, the way they usually talk, the way you interact, if something's off with them, hang up and then call the person back. And you might find out that the person who initially called you was not who you thought it was. And again, when in doubt, just hang up the phone. You don't have to be nice and polite because these people are not going to be nice and polite to you. If you start getting the hair on the back of the neck standing up or something just doesn't seem right, you don't have to make excuses to get off the phone. Simply hang up the phone because the more you talk to them, the better chance of success they're going to have. So just don't even engage with these people. So here are 4 ways to identify a call. I know you've heard me talk about it before. First, if you didn't initiate it and you weren't expecting it, use caution, okay? Because they could be legit or it could be a scam. The next thing you're going to notice is there's a sense of urgency. You have to do this right now. You can't call us back. We can't take care of this later. We have to do it right now. That's a red flag. Another one is a consequence. If you don't do this right now, something bad's going to happen, such as you're going to be arrested. They're going to close your account. You're going to have to pay all this money. Your social security number is going to be suspended. You're not going to be able to get the vaccine. Your family member is going to be in trouble or your family member is going to be hurt or whatnot. I mean, I could go on with all the examples. So again, you have to do this right now. And if you don't, there's a severe consequence. The third thing is that if you don't comply with, or the third thing is they demand something specific. Typically, they want you to go buy gift cards. Federal agencies do not demand payment in the form of gift cards. Actually, I don't know of any federal agencies that even accept gift cards as payment. So just keep that in mind. If you hear the words gift cards on any phone call, hang up the phone. I guarantee you it's a scam. Okay, so let's talk about another technique that I like to use, and it's called, I call it boosting your CQ, your cyber intelligence, which is a skill that's now required for the digital age. So one of the techniques that I teach in my Boost Your CQ workshops is validate or eliminate. And it's really simple to remember. It's supposed to remember, 20 different steps for each different thing. Ask yourself every single time, can I validate this? If I can't, then you just eliminate it. So how do you validate with phone calls? Well, first, or with emails, you can call the organization that's on the website or the statement. So whether you get a phone call, email, letter, text message, whatever it might be, if they pretend to be from your bank or from a government agency or anything like that, all you have to do is look up that phone number for that organization. Now, don't do an internet search for, Bank of America phone number and then have a phone number pop up. You want to make sure you're going to the organization's actual website and looking up the contact us or contact information on that website, because we're finding bad guys will register phone numbers and post them online. So if you just do the, hey, what's Bank of America's phone number, and it shows just a phone number at the top, you could be calling the bad guys by mistake. So make sure you go to the right website. Or if you have your bank statement, it's usually listed on there as the phone number, or for your credit card, it's on the back of your card. If you have an online account, log into your online account. So it's another trick that you can use. And also with emails, call the sender to verify. If you get an email that looks like it's from George and you're not sure if he sent it or not, or it seems kind of out of character, or if it just says, hey, watch this video and there's a link in there, call George. Hey, did you just send me this? And that way you can confirm, because if you click on the link, you could end up putting bad stuff on your device, or you could end up being taken to a website where they're going to get you to enter information. So just be careful. And if you try all these, where you try calling the organization, or if you logged into your account, or if it's an email you got and you're unable to verify the sender, just delete it. Again, if it's that important, they're going to find another way to contact you. So when in doubt, just delete, just eliminate. Protecting your credit, you all have heard me say this before, but it can definitely, you have a refresher or a reminder if you haven't done these steps yet. So there are two things you can do to protect your credit. You can either have a fraud alert or a credit freeze, which is also known as a security freeze. I highly recommend the credit freeze because it offers better protection. When you freeze your credit, new creditors never see your credit reports. If they don't see the report, they can't make a decision. Therefore, the account won't be opened. So it's your best defense against new account fraud. A fraud alert is the second choice. If you can't do a freeze, then do a fraud alert. It still lets your credit report go out, but there's a disclaimer on it asking the creditor to validate your information before they open the account. It's not as effective as a freeze, but it's better than nothing. Both of them are free. And one thing I want you to remember is that when you go to place a fraud alert, you only contact one bureau, they notify the other two on your behalf. With a freeze, you have to contact each organization directly. There are two ways that you can do it, either by using their automated phone service or online. I highly recommend you use the online method, meaning go to their website and register to get the credit freeze, because you get instant confirmation. Also, TransUnion and Equifax enable or allow you to set up an online account, which makes managing your freeze much, much easier. No locks. The reason I'm bringing this up is there's a lot of confusion out there, especially with the credit bureaus, because again, they don't want you to have a freeze because you're prohibiting them from making money by selling the credit report. So they came up with this term called a credit lock. Now, I know for Experian, for example, and I've had numerous calls the past couple months of people telling me this is what happened. So they go to Experian.com to try to put a freeze on their credit report. Well, they're on the home page and they start looking around and they end up creating an online account for a lock. They put a credit lock on. Well, when you sign up for that credit lock, you get 7 days credit wise or whatever they call it. It's like their credit monitoring, whatnot type of service that normally costs $24.99 a month. So you're signing up for a service that you don't need, and you may have to pay for a fee for something that's free. Now, a credit lock does, in essence, the same thing as a credit freeze, where it prohibits someone from seeing your credit report or a new creditor from seeing the credit report. But here's the main difference. A credit freeze, your rights are mandated by federal law. There's a federal law that outlines what is a credit freeze, what does it mean, what do the creditors have to do, and what are your rights. When you sign up for a credit lock, you're entering into a contractual agreement with the credit bureaus, and you could be signing away some of your rights. So forget the lock, don't mess with the lock. What you want is a good old-fashioned credit freeze. Okay, so are there only 3 consumer reporting agencies? Because that's what everyone thinks, right? There's only 3 of them. Well, you have your regular ones, your Experian, Equifax, and your TransUnion, and there's a 4th one, Innovis. If you've heard me speak before, you know I mentioned this one. Also, I just found out within the past couple weeks that Innovis, now they also allow you to set up an online account so you can manage your credit freeze. So that's TransUnion, Equifax, and Innovis. You can set up the online account, makes it much, much easier. Experian is still the one who's dragging their feet where you can't quite do it yet. Then there's the specialty type of credit bureaus. Those are your NCTUE, that's National Consumer Telecom Utilities Exchange. That's for the utilities industry. Then there's Check System, and that's for the banking industry. And there's a whole bunch of other ones out there. Then you also have the subprime lending or second chance lending programs. That would be Clarity, SageStream, and so on. So there's so many of these credit bureaus out there, but I recommend paying attention to 6 of them. That's where we're seeing the activity. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, Innovis, NCTUE, and Clarity. Those are the ones where we're starting to see more activity. Okay, so how do you activate a freeze? Like I said before, you can do it by mail, by phone, or online. I highly recommend the online method. I do not recommend the mailing method because quite often when you mail it off, if you have not sent it certified return receipt requested, the Bureau will often say, we never got it. Nope, you never asked for it. And the other thing is if you do by mail, it could take weeks to months before it actually gets completed. So by doing it by phone is faster. Doing it online is even faster than that, and it makes it much easier to manage. Review your credit reports. You've heard me say this before, at least once a year. And normally by federal law, you get 1 free credit report every 12 months from each credit bureau. However, because of COVID and the financial situation a lot of people are in right now, through a partnership with the Federal Trade Commission, you can get a free credit report every week from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion by going to annualcreditreport.com. That's the website that was built by the Federal Trade Commission and the 3 big bureaus to make it easier for you to get your reports. And also with Innovis with Innovis and with Equifax and TransUnion, if you set up that online account for managing your freeze, you can also get your credit reports in there. Not 1 every week, but you can get anywhere from 2 to maybe 6 per year, depending on the credit bureau. So it allows you to get more than just the 1 a year. If you do need help, we do have help available. Last fall, I launched a new podcast. It's called Privacy Mentor. It airs every week and it's available wherever you listen to podcasts. Being Mac users, that would be Apple Podcasts. So if you have a moment, go ahead and search, sign up for it. And if you like what you hear, leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. The next thing is identity theft restoration services. My company's been doing this for 15 years. If you know someone who's a victim, they can give us a call. And we'll also do case reviews because sometimes people think they've done everything to fix the problem, but they actually haven't done everything they really need to do. And they might not have put things in place to prevent them from being re-victimized again in the future. So we do offer case reviews. They can give us a call or they can go to the website. And I did recently launch a new program. It's an online program. It's Protect Your Identity in 14 Days. And it's just every day for 14 days, we talk about a new step of how to protect yourself. Now, last year in February, I came out with my new book called Protect Your Identity, a step-by-step guide and workbook. And some of you purchased that. Thank you. But trying to keep that book up to date, I would pretty much every 3 months have to be doing a new revision of it. So that's why I'm now shifted to this Protect Your Identity in 14 Days, because when you sign up for that program, you do get lifetime access. So if anything should change, like with Innovis now offering the new online account, I'm in the process of updating that section. So if you've already been through the program, the Protect Your Identity in 14 Days, you get a notification that a section's been updated so that you can update your stuff as well. So that's it. If you have any questions, there's my contact information. So my number is 239-435-9111. I like to say I'm the other 911 for those other types of identity theft emergencies. And my email, ck@kerskie.com, or you can always visit my website, which is kerskie.com. And I have information on there on the 14-day program and also help if you are a victim of identity theft. And don't forget, check out my podcast if you get a chance. It's Privacy Mentor. And that is everything that I have for the presentation. So I'm going to open it up for questions. So bear with me, and I'm going to minimize this so we can go back. Okay, we are back at the main screen.
Okay, I have the
Sheeta, do we
first
have any questions?
Oh, we have tons. I have the
All
first
right.
question though. All right. All right. So with the freeze, do I, does it cost to enact the freeze and then remove the freeze? Okay.
No. No,
Oh.
there used to be. Before
Mhm.
2018, there was a fee. They would charge $10 to put it on, $10 to take it off every time you wanted to lift it, unless if you were over the age of 65 or a victim of identity theft. But because of the Equifax data breach, there was amendment to the federal regulation, which said that they are no longer allowed to charge any fees at all for a credit freeze. So they are free for life.
Excellent. So I can put it on and then remove it anytime I want.
Anytime you want, no fees, it's all free.
Okay, wonderful. Don Peacock, can you unmute yourself and ask your question because it's related to what we were just talking about?
Yeah, hi, Carrie.
Hi.
I've always had problems with Equifax. You go through the whole thing and it says, I just did it now because I hadn't done it in years, but I've never gotten one from them. It always says, fill out this form and mail it to us and we'll send you one. So, and
Okay.
there's many complaints online about them, but the other two, I've never had a problem.
Yeah, so what happens a lot of times is if you try to initiate a credit freeze by going to their main page,
No, I'm
their
not talking about
homepage.
freeze. I'm talking about credit reports. I'm sorry.
Oh, to get the credit report. Oh, no, all you do is go to annualcreditreport.com.
Right. Yeah. It never works for me with Equifax. I think
Okay.
maybe they don't like Macs.
Okay, no, it has nothing to do with Max. What I think it might be is that there could be some incorrect information in their database. And I've had this happen to a couple people. It might not have anything to do with identity theft, but there's something in there that when they're asking you those ID verified questions, if you don't answer those questions correctly, then it kicks you out and it tells you you have to contact them directly. Or if you try to do it so many times in a short period of time, they actually lock it so you can't use that online system because they want to make sure it's a bad guy who's not doing it. So I would recommend going ahead and calling Equifax and ask, they're going to ask you some questions to make sure that it's you and just request it and tell them, say, look, I've been trying to get my report online and I can't get it. And they'll be able to tell you if it's been locked or maybe there's something incorrect in there.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot.
Sure, you're welcome.
Yeah, Jim Corsica, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Hi, Carrie. Thanks a lot.
Hi, Jim.
What is the financial institution's obligation if your identity theft takes place? What is the difference in obligation for the financial institution if it's your credit card versus if it's your checking account?
Yeah, great question.
Are they the same?
Similar. There's different types. So if you're using, let's say it's a debit/credit card. Okay, so you're using your debit card, which you can use as a credit card, and there's fraudulent transactions on that account. You have anywhere from 30 to 60 days, or it could be less, depending on the financial institution's requirements, to report those fraudulent transactions. If you report them to them within that required time frame, you have zero liability. Now, for credit cards, if someone gets a hold of your credit card number and there's fraudulent transactions, you have 60 days from the date of the transaction to report it to the credit card company. If you report it within the required time frame, you have zero liability. Now, I will tell you there is a little bit of a trick with the credit card companies that I've seen if it's a significant charge. I mean, one victim I worked with, somebody got a hold of his credit card number and spent $90,000 on a weekend in Vegas. Well, because that was a significant amount of money, the federal law says that you have to send written notification to the credit card company. I've seen them only mandate that written part if it's a significant dollar amount. What's significant could be 10,000 or less, could be 5,000 or less. It depends on the credit card company. But if it's a couple $100 charge or maybe $1,000 charge, call them first and tell them that you see this fraudulent charge on there. Say, okay, we're going to take care of it, check everything. And if they reverse the charge, everything's fine. But if it's a large dollar amount, I would call them first, dispute it, ask them for their address and follow up with it in writing, because the federal law says you have to report it to them within writing within 60 days. So if you wait to send them written notification until that 61st day, they could try to push that liability back on you. So that's just a little bit of a difference there. But your best defense is to reconcile your statements. The sooner you detect the fraud and report it, the faster you're going to be made whole. Now, in the bank accounts, if you initiate a wire transfer and later discover that the transfer instructions were fraudulent, the bank has no liability. That's all on you. So what I recommend for wire transfers, if you have to do any at all, when you get the transfer instructions, call the organization who sent them to you. Don't call the phone number in the email, because sometimes these can be fake or phishing emails. Call the number for the organization and just say, I received my wire transfer instructions. I want to verbally confirm them with you before I send the money. Okay, that's step one. Then after you've initiated the wire transfer, give it about an hour, contact the organization where you were sending the money to, and have them confirm they received the money. They can call their bank and confirm that the money's there. The reason you should do that within a couple of hours of submitting the wire transfer is because if there is fraud involved and it's caught and reported in less than 48 hours, there's a good chance you can recover that money. If you wait until after the 48-hour window, that money's gone and you're not going to get it back.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Carrie, in regard to if it's a significant amount and you have to submit a written complaint or disclaimer, is there something else that you can help cover yourself? Because can the company say after a certain amount of time, hey, we sort of never got that written information, if it's going through the mail? So how do you cover yourself just in case?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. Certified return receipt requested. So when you mail it to them, you want to pay the extra, I think it's like anywhere between $12 or $13, something like that. When you get that little card that they put on the envelope, so that when it's delivered, when they receive it, they have to sign for it to document it was received, and then that gets mailed back to you, and that's your proof. So as last time I checked in regards to case law, as far as what's acceptable for delivery of mail for evidence purposes, it has to be certified return receipt requested. Don't just do the tracking on it, because from my understanding that if you have to take this to court, that tracking is not confirmed that it was delivered. You have to have certified return receipt requested.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
Larry and Joan, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yeah, just a quick question. We talk all the time about malwares in computers and scanning for viruses, that sort of thing. Can you do that on a phone also? Do you know?
You can, yeah. There are a lot of programs that offer the antivirus programs and scanning for phones. Now, as you all know, with iPhones, they're a little bit more secure than if you had an Android, you absolutely have to have an antivirus on it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. With iPhones, it's not as much, but if your phone starts doing something a little odd, there are some scans that are apps that you can use to do scans on them. That would be more of a Dennis Giacomo question, as he's the one who, when I have clients who have those issues, I bring him in. And he can tell you, which are the ones to use. But yeah, if it's anything outside of an Apple platform or anything outside of an iPhone, then absolutely you want to have an antivirus program running on it.
Okay, and just to follow up, and not to get detailed here, but I have a problem where anytime I try calling my bank on my cell phone, as soon as the phone rings at the bank, I get a pop-up that says I have a scam call coming in, a call that's been labeled as a scam. And it's been happening for the past 2 weeks every time, so.
Okay. What you might want to do is that phone number when you're calling the bank, is that a number that you have programmed into your phone where you just hit the number for the bank, or are you dialing the new number each time?
Oh, it's programmed in.
Okay. Try dialing the number direct and see if you get the same thing, because it could just be something with the number being stored in your phone. Sometimes what we find is that these companies, they change their phone numbers. So if they get rid of an old phone number, the bad guys are going to register it. and they're going to answer it the same way the company used to answer it. Perfect example, there was a victim both Dennis and I worked with where she thought she was calling Comcast because she had the phone number written down on her refrigerator, and it was off of a bill from years ago. So that's the number she always called. Well, once we started digging into it, we discovered that that phone number Comcast had disposed of 10 years prior, but the bad guys registered it and they still kept answering it Comcast. So you might want to try the direct dial and look up the phone number, make sure that's still an active phone number. If you still have that issue, then you might want to talk to Dennis or someone else that you work with and have them just check out your phone and make sure there aren't any problems.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Frank just got up and walked away. Frank, are you in hearing distance? Frank, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Okay, I always thought the credit card companies call you about a charge that looks screwy. They always call my Chase credit cards, which is all I have, is they do that all the time. So is that not something that, I mean, pretty much everybody does, or?
Well, it depends. You can set up a preference. Most of the time, the banks and credit card companies, when you get those fraud alerts, it can either be by text message, by phone, by email, depending on your preferences and what the company offers. Yes, a lot of them do still call and they'll do that. But the reason I bring up the scam calls is because the bad guys know that banks and credit card companies do this. So they know that you're used to getting those calls, and it gives them a perfect opportunity to call you pretending to be that company to get you to give out information. So just use caution when you do that. When you get those type of calls for fraud, go ahead and kind of, just take the information from them. If you have online access to your account, log into your account and you should be able to see that fraud charge there. Or a better thing you can do is when you get that call, just say, hey, look, I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I was running out the door. Can I get your name and phone number and call you back? And then call back the phone number for the credit card company and say, hey, I just got a call from someone regarding a possible fraudulent transaction on my account. I'm not sure if this call was real or not. Can you patch me through to so-and-so, or is this person or is this extension actually valid? So I know it sounds like a lot of extra double work, but in this environment today, you kind of have to do that.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
I have a question in that regard.
Yes.
What if I'm going to travel? Should I still call the credit card companies to let them know this is where I'm going and this is how long I'm going to be away?
It's always a good idea to do that, just to give them a heads up. I've heard people from both sides. I've heard people say, yeah, I traveled all over the country and at no point in time did my credit card company call me. I've had other people tell me, yeah, I forgot to call and they shut off my card while I was on vacation. So it's always a good idea to give them a heads up. And sometimes by having the online access, sometimes you can do it right in the account where you can put in where you're going to be and the date, the start time, the end time. So I highly recommend everybody set up those online accounts with all of your financial institutions, because you can have access to your transactions. I mean, I have all the apps on my phone for everywhere I have a financial account with. And every morning when I get up, I'm looking at the transactions and the balances, and I do the same before I go to bed. If I notice anything, I report it right away. The faster you report it, the faster you're going to be made whole. And same thing for when you're traveling. I still recommend reaching out to them, especially because nobody's really been doing any traveling for a year. So as we start getting back into it, and the bad guys know that we're going to start getting back into traveling because so many people have been limited, and people who love to travel, the first chance they're going to be gone and out doing it. So the bad guys might try to do some charges as well. So definitely give them a call.
Great, thanks. Because my husband and I, we do check every day to make sure.
Perfect.
Okay, Alan and Barbara, you have a question. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
It's really a curiosity question, but if a liability is relieved, who actually foots the bill? Does the credit card company foot the bill? Does the vendor foot the bill? Who pays when they don't charge you?
Great question. It really just depends. Sometimes it's the merchant. Maybe they're out that sale, so they lose the money. Sometimes it could be the credit card company or the bank. And if it is them, they often have insurance or they write it off as a cost of doing business. So it really just depends on when it was reported, the type of charge, and what their procedures are. Sometimes it's a certain dollar amount that'll trigger the liability to go to one person to the other. So it really just varies.
Okay, well, I was curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, but at least it's not yours.
Okay. Ellen, I'm sorry, Larry and Joan, you have an interesting comment in the chat about the New York Times. Can you unmute yourself and comment on that?
Yeah, we were talking about freezing the accounts, your credit bureau accounts, so you can't get in it. But there was an article, I think it was yesterday, perhaps in the New York Times, about some scams where the insurance companies can still hit your credit card, your credit report, and they gather some data from you. And so people have been going online and they'd start to fill in an application for a insurance policy, and the system would automatically fill in the rest of the data because of the data they got, the insurance company got, because they're trying to make the insurance application process as easy as possible.
Right.
So they have it set up so it sort of populates the application for you. Well, they get that information from your credit report. And they had people that were getting phone numbers and other kinds of data and the insurance companies found out about it because they noticed an unusual number of insurance applications that were being abandoned because the bad guys were going just far enough to get some data that they wanted from this auto population of the insurance application, and then they'd go use it for other reasons. But I think it was in the paper yesterday or Saturday.
Yeah, so addressing that, the credit bureaus, they sell more than full credit reports. Now, full credit report, it has information about your credit accounts and how, if you pay them on time, what your credit limit is, what your high balance is, has all the details on it. Credit bureaus also sell things called credit headers, which might be name, address, and phone number and date of birth. That's not a full credit report. That's a credit header. So I'm assuming that's where they're getting this information from. So when you start filling it out, it'll pre-populate with the information from these credit headers. Now, federal law says they cannot see for applications of new credit accounts, they cannot see the full credit report. But I'm assuming this full credit report is not what's being populated. It's probably just the credit header. So yes, even though the credit freeze, it's to protect you from new account fraud, which is involving credit accounts, it's not going to protect you from all types of identity theft. There are still things that the credit bureaus are allowed to share and sell that could lead to other types of identity theft outside of credit related. And yes, we've seen a significant increase in people getting insurance policies. But they will get an insurance policy under someone else's name or under your name for a vehicle that they own. All different types of things we're seeing. And I think it's because when the insurance companies pull those credit reports, because it's not a new credit account, it could be a gray area of how those reports are still going out. So that is something that we're starting to look into, because again, we're hearing some of that too, like you read in that article. And that's why I tell people that a credit freeze is not the end all be all. It's the end all be all for new account fraud involving credit accounts, but it doesn't do anything else for all the other various types of identity theft. So that's why you still have to keep your eyes and ears open. And the same thing if you had signed up for credit monitoring services, because what they're doing has nothing to do with applying for new credit, they wouldn't notify you either, because it's not a credit application, it's an insurance application. Now, what you could do, and again, I don't know if this works, I haven't tried it, but there's a thing called opt-out pre-screen, where you go to optoutprescreen.com and you're opting out from having the credit bureaus share your information for pre-approved credit and insurance offers. So by doing that, they're not allowed to sell your information for those marketing purposes. So I'd be curious to find out if the people who had signed up for opt-out pre-screen, if they were the ones whose information would be auto-populated or not. Because if they can't get the information for the pre-insurance decision, then they wouldn't be able to use it for the auto population on these fields. So if you haven't done the opt-out pre-screen, I would suggest going ahead and doing that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carrie, Carrie, with that opt-out pre-screen, does
Mhm.
that also pertain to people who are applying to, say, refinance their mortgages? Because a lot of that has gone on in the last year.
Yeah, so what opt-out pre-screen, it doesn't block you from doing anything at all. It's just the credit bureaus can't share your information or sell it for those pre-approved offers. Okay. Now, if you're going and you're applying to get a refinance, that would be more of the credit freeze, because when you go to apply to refi, they're going to need to review your credit report. So you'd have to do a lift for that. But with the opt-out pre-screen, it just prevents you from getting all the junk mail and all the solicitations, because the way that these companies work is that they might reach out to one of the credit bureaus and say, hey, send me information on everyone who has a credit score of 725 and higher. And then you get hit with all these marketing and promotional offers. So by doing the opt-out pre-screen, that's what you're stopping. And here's a little trick too. When you do the opt-out pre-screen, you have two options. You can do it online or by mail. Start with the online, and when you complete that registration, that makes it good for 5 years. When you get to the final confirmation page that says everything's finalized and you've set up your opt-out pre-screen, in that very first paragraph at the top of the page, you'll see a click here or print here button. Make sure you click that and print out that page, sign it, and mail it in. Because if you don't do that last step, it's only good for 5 years, and then you have to do it again. If you print that confirmation page, sign it, and mail it in, you make that option permanent. And that's a step that everybody always misses.
Excellent. Excellent. Wayne Mertz, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
I have difficulty buying things online because I'm a snowbird and my home address is often different than my billing address. Do we notify the credit card companies about that, or how do we handle that?
It might not be a bad idea to tell the credit card company, you know, when you're going to be down here or up north or whatever the case might be, where your billing address and your mailing address are different. And a lot of times it could be where it's not your credit card company, it might be the merchant. And with the merchant, because they're trying to deploy ways to identify fraud. So sometimes they know that if maybe the billing address and the mailing address are in two different areas, that could be a potential red flag for them. But the verification on the credit card, yes, that goes back to the credit card company. So if you know you're going to be down here for a period of time, it would be a good idea to contact your credit card company and just let them know, because if they're the ones who are stopping it because you're entering in the two different addresses and it's kicking back. So maybe try that and see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't, then that means it's on the merchant side, and it's really hard to overcome that because you can't really tell the merchants, hey, I'm down here now. So that's a little bit tricky.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Barbara Karp, can you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Okay, I have a very old-fashioned husband, and we do not have any bank accounts online because he doesn't trust it. Are we safer?
No. You are actually at greater risk of becoming a victim because you're not online. And I know that sounds crazy, but what we found is because all these organizations allow you to set up an online account. If you're not doing it, you're leaving it wide open for someone to do it on your behalf. So they're going to claim your online account for you, which will allow them to take over your bank account, your brokerage account, your credit, your utilities, all your accounts. I had a victim I worked with where he had the same mindset where he's like, if I don't do anything online, I'm safer. He did not set up his online accounts, and he was a private wealth management client of a national firm. The bad guy just called the 800 number to this company, didn't have to speak to his wealth management person, just called the general 800 number, pretended to be him, gave name, address, date of birth, and social. Like I said, that information is out there available for about 75 cents now on pretty much everyone. And said, yeah, I haven't set up my online account. Could you go help me set it up? Why, sure, Mr. Smith, would be happy to do it. What's your email address? And we'll send you a link. They sent him a link. The bad guy set it up, and they ended up over 6 months stealing $250,000. So definitely set up those online accounts. If you choose not to use them, that's up to you. But at least set them up, because if you don't set it up, somebody else is going to do it on your behalf.
So how do we go about setting it up? Does the bank help you, or how do you do that?
No, usually you can go to, well, you would contact the bank. Now, if you go into the branch, a lot of times they can't set it up for you because you have to create usernames and passwords and whatnot, but you can call the bank and tell them, hey, I've never set up my online account. How do I do this? Sometimes they'll send you, email you a link, and you click on that link, and then you just follow through the instructions and follow the process of how to do it. Same thing with your credit cards, mobile phone accounts, anyone that you do business with. You can always call them and ask them, how do I do this? And they'll usually send you instructions, or sometimes they'll walk you through while you're on the phone with them. They'll walk you through the steps to help you set them up. But make sure you record those usernames and passwords in a secure location, because if you need to get access to them again, you need to know where they are.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Bill Nice, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you. I recently had 3 attempts at credit incursions, and I think they failed because I had the first 3 of those credit unions frozen.
Mm-hmm.
But I became a little paranoid with that, and I subscribed, and I can't remember what the names are, with one of the unions to a monitoring deal for a year. There was a price. What do they do? I mean, what did I buy there?
Nothing. I hate to say it, but pretty much that's what you paid for, was nothing. All they're going to do is monitor your credit for changes. Now, like you said, and you brought up a good point that I didn't mention, is that with a credit freeze, the freeze doesn't stop bad guys from applying for credit using your identity, but it stops them from being successful, which is what you found out. Okay, so they can apply all day long. There's no way to stop it. That's impossible. But what you want to do is stop them from being successful. And that's what that credit freeze does. So if you signed up for one of those monitoring services, all they're going to tell you is, hey, there was an inquiry. That's about it, but they're not going to do anything about it.
Okay.
Most of those services, they claim that if you have an issue, they're going to fix it. 90% of the victims I work with have one of those services, and they end up having to hire and pay us to fix it because those companies don't do it. Or at least they don't do it effective enough to where the problem is actually resolved. Most of the time, people try to fix it on their own for about 2 to 3 months, and then they call me just saying, here, fix it, take my money, whatever, I don't care, just get rid of this problem. But yeah, I would go ahead and cancel that service and save yourself some money, because they're not going to do anything for you. Now what you can do for those inquiries, contact those companies, not the credit bureaus, those creditors, the ones where those fraudulent applications were filed or attempted. Contact those companies and confirm with them an account wasn't opened, which it won't be because you had a freeze, but tell them that you did not do that and that was a fraudulent inquiry and you want it removed from your credit report. By law, they're supposed to report that information back to the credit bureau, so the credit bureau will remove that inquiry off of your credit report. But it has to be initiated with the creditor, because if you call the credit bureau and say, I didn't do those, take those off, they're going to reach out to that creditor, and the creditor is going to say, yeah, there was an actual application, and the credit bureau is going to say, no, we're not taking them off. So you have to start with the creditor first and get those removed.
Thank you. I contacted them, but did not make that request.
Yeah, and again, you wouldn't know to do that. I only know it because I'm in this space, and those companies, they're not forthcoming with that information. They know that if you ask, they have to do it, but they won't tell you or offer to do it on their own.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carol Green, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, what website do you go to find the opt-out pre-screen?
Yeah, it's just optoutprescreen.com. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to type it in chat here.
Thank you.
Optoutprescreen.com.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
This is
We-
Mary. Would you
Go ahead,
again
Mary.
tell us your podcast title?
Yeah, it's called Privacy Mentor. So if you search by Privacy Mentor or search by my name, it'll pop up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Betty Larson, can you comment on what you wrote in the chat?
Yes, I subscribed to the podcast already a few
Thank
minutes
you.
ago, and it's wonderful. So many topics there. I've got 33 to listen to, and it's going to be very, very, very helpful.
Well,
So
thank
I
you.
I recommend it to everyone. It's good
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's almost like we planned that. No.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is because again, I put all this out there for all of you. So if you ever have a question or something you want additional information about, send me an email and we'll make an episode about it. Because I only know the things that I'm seeing and hearing and the questions that I'm getting when people are calling or commenting. So if you have one, just go ahead and put it out there. I also have a YouTube channel where I do some videos. There are a couple of them on there that are a little bit different than the podcast, because a lot of times I just live record the podcast and then the video goes to YouTube and the audio goes to the podcast. But there are some extra videos, like one that explains the difference between what is encryption, end-to-end encryption and encryption in transit. So I have my fancy little graphics that I use. It's just a rolled up piece of paper. But anyways. But again, it's just anytime when I get people that kind of ask me the same question over and over again, that's what becomes an episode.
And that's a good idea. Thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
Linda Colvin, you had a comment in the chat. Can you unmute yourself and go ahead?
Well, essentially the comments that I had, or the comment I had, is that often like I might get a call from a doctor's office, but it doesn't identify the doctor's office. And, they may leave a message or they may not, which is a real problem. So sometimes I answer these that don't have a caller ID with them, but I always hesitate. And another instance of that is when I'm getting a call from like a travel company, like Road Scholar or Overseas Adventure Travel, and they don't have a caller ID. Part of the problem has been that so many people are working from home. I even got a call that was from a person working for the Massachusetts Attorney General's office from home. And so it didn't say that that's who it was.
Right.
So anyway, so with the pandemic too, that's, made things a little more complicated. So that was just my comment.
Yeah, and it's a great comment. And that's why I tell people just don't even pay attention. Don't rely on the caller ID because it's not accurate. And it could be that it's inaccurate because of spoofing or inaccurate because, like you said, so many people are working from home. They're using their home phone number is what's showing as opposed to the business number. So I really don't even pay attention or look at the caller ID. I'll let it go to voicemail. If I'm expecting a call, then I'll answer the call. But as soon as I get on, if I can tell it's starting with the scam thing, or if there's a long pause at the beginning where you answer and you're like, hello, that's because they're calling you and maybe 10 or 20 other people at the same time and someone answered before you. So that call is going to eventually drop off. But you can always answer. And if nobody responds or if you think it's a scam, just hang up.
Yeah, no, I always hang up immediately if there's any kind of pause. The other day I got an unknown caller. It turned out to be somebody soliciting supposedly for the police, but that I hang up on too.
Yeah.
Okay.
A great way to do it.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Carrie, I find that actually all of my healthcare providers now, whether it be the dentist or physician, they text me now. They don't call me, they text me. So is there a possibility of that being spoofed?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention it. So we've seen a significant increase in, it's called smishing. So it's like or like emails, you have the phishing, but if you get it via text message, it's called smishing because SMS messaging is the platform for texting. We've seen a significant increase. I know myself, I used to get maybe one every 6 months. I might have 6 or 7 in one day. So definitely the smishing techniques have increased. Be very cautious. Usually in these, they're going to tell you to either call a phone number or they're going to tell you to click a link. So you need to treat all the text messages just as you do emails, meaning looking for phishing, looking for potential scams. If you didn't recognize it, you're not expecting it. You didn't initiate it, meaning you didn't call the bank and they said, okay, we're going to text you a link. Well, you know that link's coming. That's okay. If randomly you get this link out of the blue and you have no idea what it's about, again, go back to that validate or eliminate. Call the phone number for the organization. Hey, I just got this text message. Did you send this to me? Because they're coming through and they could say that there's a fraudulent transaction on your account. It could say that you've won a prize. It could say something COVID related. All different types of messages that they're going to put in there to encourage you to call that phone number or click that link. But don't do either one of those until you've confirmed that sender. And don't confirm by just the number that displays in it, because sometimes it could be just a random code like a 44-123 or something. You need to actually, if they say they're Bank of America, go to Bank of America's website. The other thing is don't respond, just simply delete. So in the past, we used to tell people when you were getting these unexpected text messages or solicitations, all you had to do was type the word stop and it would go back and you'd stop getting those. Well, that's only legitimate organizations. Just like if you sign up for a newsletter and you don't want it anymore, you click unsubscribe. It's kind of that same way of thinking. But with the bad guys, they don't play by the rules. The bad guys don't care. So when you type the word stop back to one of these smishing messages, you've just confirmed A, there's a human at the other end, B, it's a valid number, and C, that you interact with text messaging. So don't even respond with the word stop, just delete it. Now, if you keep getting multiple ones in the same day, kind of from the same number, what you can do, contact your mobile phone company. And there's usually a short number where you could forward that text to notify them. And then they start adding that to a database so they can try to block those in the future. I believe that the number is 7726, but double check with your phone carrier to make sure that's the right number. And the way it works is you take that text message, you forward it to that text number, and then you'll get a message back from your phone carrier saying, thank you for reporting it. Can you tell us what number the text message came from? So you go back to that fake message, get that number, and send it back to the phone company. So it's helping them build a database, just like they did for the scam phone calls. Now they're starting to build a database for these fake text messages. But again, you can reach out to your phone company and ask them what extra tools or how you can, cut down on some of that. You can try blocking, where when the message comes up, sometimes you click on the extra, like the little I dot or information for that person, you can block that number. But if they try spoofing that number, then you're blocking the spoof number, not the real number. So it's kind of new territory when it comes to these text messages. A lot of the phone companies, they put things in place to help reduce the robocalls and the scam calls. Now they're trying to scramble to put something together for the text messages. Because it literally went from a couple a year to, tons in one day. So they're really trying to figure out how to do it. And the other thing with the text messaging is that people have been warned about phishing emails for years. So people know to use caution when they're in their emails. Who do you get text messages from? People in your circle, people you trust, because they're the ones you give your cell phone number to. So that's why the bad guys are now doing these smishing campaigns, because they know that when you receive a text message, it's usually someone from within your inner circle or someone you have given your cell phone number to. So there's that layer of trust there. And that's what they're trying to take advantage of. So again, every text message, you need to look at it just like you would an email to make sure it's not a fake.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a request and a question. The request is, could you put off a slide with your information so that you can be contacted?
I'll type it in the contact information here, because if I go back to screen sharing, then I can't see so hang on a minute, let me do this.
That's fine. And then Mary, can you unmute yourself and ask your question when Terry finishes? I'm sorry, when Carrie finishes, sorry.
Sure. Carrie, there have been a lot of phone calls about car warranty. People call you
Oh,
and tell
yeah.
you your car is out of warranty. Would you talk about that a little bit? Thanks.
Yeah, really, the only thing I can say about it is hang up. There are tons of them. I mean, I might get 4 of those messages a day. Just hang up. What you can do on some of those, you can try blocking the number, but again, the bad guys will spoof it. So it gets through on the spoofed number as opposed to the one that you blocked. But any of those phone calls, another one we're seeing, and I didn't mention it, is Amazon. People are getting calls from people pretending to be from Amazon saying, hey, there's a large purchase that you just made and we need to confirm it verbally before we authorize a transaction. And it's usually around $1,000, give or take. It's catching people off guard because more and more people are using Amazon from shopping at home because, I mean, not so much here in Florida, but in other states where they've been completely locked down, everybody's ordering everything because you can't go out and go shopping. So they know that more and more people are using Amazon, more people have Amazon accounts. And so that when you get this call, they'll say you need to verify this purchase. You'll respond to, no, that wasn't me. I didn't do that. Oh, well, maybe there's a problem with your account. Let me look on our end. Okay, so we don't see anything on our end. Maybe there's a problem with your device. So they have you go to a website and allow remote access in, and they'll be checking out your computer and go, you know what, we do see that your device has been compromised. You do have a virus on here. So we're going to loop in our IT support, and they're going to be able to help you fix this problem. And then you go on this whole big thing. One of the victims that recently worked with, they got the Amazon call, and what the bad guys did, because remember I said they take you to a website to install that remote access software, and you can do this. It doesn't matter if if you're on an Apple device or not. You're going and installing that remote access software, and because the bad guys had it, well, at some point in the conversation, the victim realized he was being conned, and he said, "This is a scam. You guys are crooks. I'm not doing this," and he hung up. Well, because they still had remote access, they went into the admin settings and changed the password on his computer. He could no longer log into his device. Locked him out of it. So then they were calling him saying, hey, pay us $3,000 or you're not getting back into your computer. So what we ended up doing, and I brought Dennis in on this one, is like a little cloak and dagger adventure. So I told the victim, disconnect from the internet, power down your device, shut it off till Dennis gets there. Dennis went to the house, they powered it back up. And because as soon as they powered it back up and it connected back to the internet, an alarm went off on the bad guy's terminal saying, hey, this one's back online again. So they watched the bad guy log in, put the admin password, and the computer screen opened up. Well, as soon as it opened up, Dennis disconnected them from the internet, cutting off the bad guy's access, went in and changed removed the remote access software and changed the password for the computer back to something else that the bad guy wouldn't know. And so it was like this whole big cloak and dagger thing that they did. Dennis called me. He's like, you're not going to believe what just happened. But anyways, he was able to save the guy and help him get back access and cut off the bad guys. So the reason I bring that up is if you do have any of these calls, and I hate using the word falling for it because you're not falling for it, you're just being manipulated into it. So if you do get manipulated and tricked into doing anything where they have you install this remote access software, make sure you delete that, or if you don't know how, have someone come out and delete it for you, because if that software is still on there, those bad guys can access your device and everything on it from anywhere in the world, anytime they want. It's a back door. It allows them to have access to it. So you have to make sure that's off. Running an antivirus scan is not going to detect it because it's not a virus. It's not malware. It's actual software that's used in the business world. So anytime you get those calls, and if they have you go to a website and install something on your device, whatever it might be, make sure whatever it was gets wiped off of there.
Carrie, thank you so much. George, all yours.
Carrie, thank you very, very much. Would everybody please unmute and go ahead and thank Carrie. We
Thanks,
really
Carrie.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Indeed,
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Thank
Hopefully
you.
next time we'll be in person. I'd love to see you all.
Yeah.
Can I come?
Good, thank you much.
Mark in England.
I'll buy you a beer if you do. Carrie, sorry, I'm in the UK, which is why I just mentioned that.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Just be a little bit of a commute.
Yes. Fantastic presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Well,
thank you.
thank
Yeah,
you.
very-
Thank you.
very
It was
well
great
done.
seeing you all again. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out because we're here to help and hopefully help you catch something before, because if you call me afterwards, well, that's when you have to pay. So stop it beforehand.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we've,
I'm in Mexico, and that has just recently been happening to me on the Amazon piece.
Okay. Yeah. It's really getting more and more people. I had another one with the IT support scam, and the couple, they lost their entire retirement savings, about $500,000. And because of the fact, the way the bad guys set it up, because they had looked at their browsing history, found out where they did all their banking and brokerage accounts. And then they started calling back, pretending to be the bank, pretending to be the brokerage firm, all this other kind of stuff. So they kept them going for a month. They made them do wire transfers, had them liquidate their assets. So by the time they realized, the couple realized it was a scam, it was too late, and they're not getting the money back. So they have about $120,000 to live off of, and they're in their 80s.
Carrie, is it better to work via an app or the browser? Or does it matter?
Because you all are using Apple computers, it's not as much of an issue. I know that for me, for work, I've used Windows for years, so everything I own is Windows based, and to convert would be I'm not that smart, and it'd be a lot of workaround. So I use both Apple and Windows products, but some things I will only do on my iPhone, because I know that using a Windows computer, there's that extra layer of risk there. But as long as you're very cautious of what you do, don't download apps just because somebody said download this app.
Well, I mean like the bank's app or
the bank app.
Yes.
Really, either one. Like I said, I have Windows and my iPhone. So sometimes I'll do things on my iPhone. Other times I have to do it from the desktop, from their full dashboard, because sometimes the apps don't have the full capabilities that the desktop version does.
Yes.
Yeah, so it really just depends on what you're doing, and it's always good to kind of go back and forth, because even Zoom, I mean, I use Zoom on a day. I do Zoom presentations at least 1 or 2 a day. So I'll be glad when we're back in person. But if I'm using certain things that I want on Zoom, I have to use the dashboard, because if I try to do it through just the little app that's installed, it won't work. So
all right, thank you.
Carrie, I have a question. The case you mentioned where people that had no online account, somebody stole an online account, were they liable for that or not?
That's interesting. So remember I said that you have to report it within a certain period of time. In this case, they didn't report it until 6 months after the fact. So the bank told them that they didn't have to refund them around like $170,000. But because of us looking into what happened, the way it was done, because then there's more to the story. So after we got involved in it, he changed all those accounts, and in less than 24 hours, the bad guy had tied everything to the new accounts, and then it happened a third time. So at that point, we also knew that there was something going on inside the bank, because how would they have the new account information in less than 24 hours? And there were other things that were starting to happen besides just having that online access. That was the start of it. So we ended up, and we also asked him if he had insurance, which he had a rider policy on his homeowners for identity theft that he didn't even know about. So we had him call his insurance agent, found out he had the policy, and in 14 days, he had a check for $174,000, the part that the bank would not recover.
Yeah. But how can you report something that you don't know?
Well, you're supposed to look at your statements. If they would have been looking at the bank statements each month.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And granted, they were looking at it. He had a family office manager that was handling it, and she would see every month it would say American Express $5,000. Well, that was normal for them to pay for a monthly American Express bill. Well, what they didn't realize, and it wasn't until they said $30,000 for American Express when they questioned it, What the bad guy did is once he had that online access to the account, he linked it to an American Express gift card. No credit monitoring detected it because it was not a credit transaction. It was a gift card. And he just slowly moved money each month over to this gift card. And that's why they didn't notice it at first, because they weren't really reconciling. They were just skimming it going, oh yeah, Amex 5,000, that's about right. And they weren't paying attention. So it was partially their fault.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question to anybody. Is there a way to silence unknown messages?
Frank, you can silence them if they're not in your contacts. You can have, there's a feature where you can say silence unknown contacts on your iPhone.
Yes.
Silence unknown contacts. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
because if a person is not in your contacts, your phone won't ring and the text will not ding. They will still show up, and it would be under the category of unknown, but you won't get that interruption of that text or of that phone call coming in.
But it will still be in messages.
Yes, it will be under unknown.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that it?
Yep.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Carrie, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Quick question. You talked about some insurance policies having a rider for identity theft.
Yes.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so in the past, identity theft insurance was a rider on homeowners insurance policies. And then eventually more people started asking for it. So now it's a separate standalone policy. So you can contact your insurance agent and ask them about the policy. Now, what the policy will do is there's no monitoring or anything like that, or at least most of them don't include it. But if something should happen, it will pay a restoration service to fix the problem up to the limits of the policy. Now, a question to ask them when you're looking at this, because they all vary, is do you get to choose the restoration company, or is one pre-approved? Because some of the ones, and if you have questions, reach out to me offline. I don't mention these in public. But there are some companies where they only work with a specific restoration service. And some of those restoration services are not very well trained. I even had one of them tell a victim that what she had couldn't possibly happen, so they weren't going to help her. Which I was like, it doesn't make sense. It actually happened. It's,
ouch.
Yeah. So that's the only thing is when you look at the policies, you just need to know when something happens, do you get to choose a company, or do they have a selection, or is it only one? If there's only one that you can use, I would look at another policy. At least that way you can get a selection. Maybe they have two.
Thank you.
You're welcome.